sympathetic to porn stars after having had a discussion with a former porn star that then turned his life around and became a pastor, as he explained that a lot of these women that get into porn are the most desperate people. They come from very impoverished backgrounds, usually from very abusive backgrounds, and they're basically selling their body as a last resort. A lot of them are addicted to drugs to be able to get them to perform. They're drugged out of their minds, and that they also have a tremendously high suicide rate, because even if they are able to earn enough money via pornography, they can't really change their life around, right? It's very hard for a girl to say, hey, I did a couple of porn films. I did porn for 10 years, but now I'd like to get an office job. People find this stuff online, and it's just sort of a slime that exists and has to follow them throughout life, that they are kind of considered to be disgusting, right? Considered to be prostitutes. You sold your body for money. And so because once they realize that they can't turn their lives around, they become suicidal, which is to me very sad. So I'm very sympathetic towards porn stars. I feel very sad for her for having gone through this. And then I was thinking about Jesse James. Now, I'm going to be honest that every time I come across a story when there is a man that very clearly has sex addiction, which Jesse James clearly has, my instinct is to be repulsed. And I think that that's fair. I think there is something about taking your clothes off and having intimate sex with a bunch of different partners, especially when you have a wife, right? It just makes me want to puke. I feel physically ill by that concept that someone could do this, that there's something that is so wrong with them in their minds that they can just routinely do this over and over again. And it's an addiction that they have. But when I was talking about this and I was reading this story, a part of me also felt very sympathetic to him too, because our instincts are to dismiss people that have porn addiction as being disgusting, right? They're the dregs of society. How disgusting. You just can't keep you can't keep it in your pants, right? You're going around, you're having sex with a bunch of different partners. Who could feel bad for you? You're addicted to sex. And yet we feel differently when we talk about addicts when it comes to the opioid crisis, people that are addicted to pills, people that are addicted to anything else. If people are alcoholics, we want them to get better. Right? Suddenly society is on their side. It's, you got to check into rehab. You got to get your life together. Yeah, we may feel like, okay, it's a little ridiculous that you have a drug addiction, but we're rooting for that person to get better. And we're not so dismissive. And I think that we need to change that. And when I read this article, the first thing that I said to my producer is I'd like to get him on to my monthly series Taboo to have a longer discussion, because clearly this man is suffering. He is sick. This is a sick man. And I don't say that in a way to denigrate his character whatsoever. I say this because this is an illness, and we have to start looking at this as an illness. In fact, one of my producers said to me, because we were talking about just pornography in general and when kids first start watching porn, maybe as a teenager, if you're a young man, how much more available it all is now. Think about this. This was unfathomable when we were growing up. When I was a child, we didn't all have smartphones. These kids now all have smartphones. They're on Instagram. They're on TikTok. Sex is everywhere. Sex is suddenly what sells. It wasn't what was needed to sell things just a few short decades ago. And now, God forbid, you're selling a purse. For whatever reason, there has to be a naked woman behind it, right? So men are having this constant response to seeing women that are attractive, constantly selling them things, seeing women that are using their bodies on Instagram to get attention. And who are they getting attention from? Men. Women, of course, as well, but sexual desire from men is what allowing these women to sustain their platforms and to, in turn, make money. And so then a guy who maybe is getting a tease of something on Instagram, right? They're following Kim Kardashian, they're following all of these other women that put their bodies on the internet, then pivots away for something a bit more severe, and they start watching pornography, and they can do it now that quickly. Just have to go onto a website and you can watch porn all day. And you have to hide, you feel ashamed, but you are stepping into what is becoming a pornographic addiction. And I think that this problem, based on the discussions that I'm having with so many people, is much more abundant than I ever realized, right? In having that backstage discussion that we talked about a couple of months ago, that a lot of people are suffering in their marriages because of this addiction. Kanye West, now known as Ye, being among them. He has spoken openly about how he feels that his pornography addiction that he's had since he was young is something that ultimately ruined his marriage. But because there aren't enough examples of people in this public sphere talking about how difficult this is, there aren't enough men that are talking about how hard it is for them not to take in pornography in their spare time, we keep treating these people like deviants. And I think that we need to stop that, right? And I want to be among the first people to stop it. I want people, especially the men that are listening to the show and the women that write into the show who talk about these problems with me, about how their husbands perhaps have a porn addiction, not to feel like it's like it's dirty, right? It is a true addiction. It is a mental addiction. And it's not going to get better if we keep treating these people like the scours of our society. We need to have the conversation openly and recognize that what is feeding this addiction is the complicitness, the marketing. The marketing of every brand is complicit in this porn addiction. The social media companies are complicit in this porn addiction. And a lot of these individuals are, in fact, victims of this addiction. So I'm not saying this to make it seem like, oh, we need to all be so sympathetic towards Jesse James. Jesse James needs to check into rehab as he once did once upon a time when he was exiting his marriage with Sandra Bullock. He needs to seek help. But we as a society need to be more open to understanding that they need help, not further denigration. And that's all that I have to say about that.